Welcome to Hoyt's Bowhunting Whitetails. It's the 13th of November. We're in one of my favorite spots, if not my favorite spot. It brings back some good memories from last year. November 9th, Carson and I were up here and I shot a nice buck. Here's a little bit of a surprise, that deer was, but looking back, I mean, we had some pictures of him from way back in September nearby. Today we're looking for another surprise. There's not anything that I know of in this area, but I don't run cameras back in here. This is a spot that pretty much doesn't see any people other than the few times that we come up here to hunt this. You can hear the wind blowing. We tried to come up in here yesterday, but it was dead still. And we got to the point where we parked our little scooters and started walking, and it was so still. I mean, you could hear a pin drop. So we just turned around and went back to the building. We knew that had we come up in here under those conditions, we would have spooked every deer within 250, 300 yards. It was that still. But today feels really good. Let's talk a little bit about yesterday afternoon. We ended up, we didn't really know for sure how to approach this Jordan buck's range from the opposite direction. So we're just trying to gain some inspiration, trying to figure out, you know, how can we pick away at him maybe from the other side of where we think he's living. We went all the way around on the road, came up through the back side of the farm, up the bluff on the four-wheeler, parked it in the picked corn, and then tried to see if we could come across the top of that field and get back into the corner over there by the open gate without the deer on either side seeing us. I think it worked pretty well. I mean, I had the sense, I guess, that as we were going along, that it would have been tough for a deer to see us. It does need more on top. It needs more structure, whether that's CRP with some trees in it or moving some cedar trees in along the fence line or something to create more of a screen. And I won't call it a bust. We saw a lot of sign out in that cornfield. Tons of big tracks. A lot of deer have been going out in there, no doubt after dark. And I'm sure that some of those big tracks were made by that buck that we're hunting. This part of the rut is pretty dead. My trail cameras right now, I've got all these stealth cameras out on the cell cams. I got those in a couple weeks ago and just been putting them around in a few places. I'm not getting hardly any daylight activity, period, bucks or does. And a lot of the bucks that I had on camera back in September and early October are gone. They're not probably gone, they just aren't coming out. So everything is pretty much locked down right now, it seems like. There's a few does here and there popping out, but for the most part, it's pretty dead on the cameras. I don't know what we're gonna see here. There's not a ton of sign. Last year there were big rubs all over the place and lots of trails. This farm is an anomaly. I haven't figured it out yet. It's sort of like beats to a different pulse than any place I've hunted before. I guess it comes back to that old saying that the more I learn, the more I find out that I don't know. And this year's been a good one of exposing all the things that I don't know. We had that prediction the other day where we said, oh, it seems like they never moved during the last whatever. Yeah. Or it's so wet. They come out. Right, then they come out. Or, boy, it's so wet. It's been all this rain. There's no way they're coming to this pond. And then here comes that buck like 10 minutes later. So what I'm going to say this morning is there's no way there's a shooter on this ridge. We'll see how the day turns out. Hoyt's Bowhunting Whitetails is brought to you by Redneck Blinds, Code of Silence Apparel, Hunt Stand Pro Whitetail App, Whitetail Institute, Research Equals Results, B3 Releases, XO Broadheads, Exact Sights, Muddy Outdoors Tree Stands, Stealth Cam Trail Cameras, and Hoyt.
He's coming kind of this way. he's coming this way. He's grunting. He's coming pretty quick though. That tall one?
Yeah. From the fat buck plot.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's that same buck that we filmed when Jared Mills was hunting with me over on that fat buck plot. As soon as he got below the stand here, I thought, man, that's a young deer. You look at the shape of the body. I was pretty excited at first, though. I said, Carson, that's a shooter. And we're like, hey, we're finally in the chips. It would have been sketchy trying to get a shot on him anyway. He basically circled us.
Yeah, the whole way.
It's kind of weird because, you know, Carson had him over to here, and then he had to switch around to the backside of the tree. And about the time he got turned and got back on the buck hit our scent. It's blowing, you know, up across behind us here. Some excitement. I mean, he was acting like there was a hot doe here.
Yeah, for sure.
He wasn't just out looking. I mean, he was looking for a hot doe that either had gotten away from him or that he knew was here somewhere. I guess that's the key. You know, right there is the key to this phase of the rut. If you've got a hot doe near your stand or your blind, you're going to have action. And if you don't, it's going to be pretty dead. We need to keep our eyes open though, because sometimes if you have one chase like that, some other bucks will trail in later. A little excitement, you know, kind of shows you what can happen even when it's going into the worst days of the rut. You can still have that hot doe come by and kind of rev things up for a few minutes.
What buck is that?
I think it's the fat buck.
Is that him?
No, it's another younger one. Okay, we'll see. Well, it's 9. We've had our second encounter this morning with a really nice young buck. I can see now why it's easy to talk yourself into shooting these 3-year-old deer, because I almost did. You know, if I'd have been just excited about, hey, I want to shoot a buck, I would have shot that deer all day long. Either way, it was exciting. We thought for a second when we first saw him, or I thought that it was the fat buck, and I'm like, oh man, the fat buck. It wasn't though, it was the skinny one, the little skinny one. I think if the fat buck shows up, we'll think it's the Goodyear blimp coming through there, because we're so keyed up to see any deer that if you saw a really big one, I think that it would really open your eyes fast. So I think that doe that first buck was chasing or was hounding probably is an estrus. That's my guess. So we might get lucky and see that fat buck yet. I mean, this could be where that deer's living, and if there's a hot doe around, that might be just enough to bring him by.
Which one, Bill?
This morning's hunt has been way better than I expected. That doe, I'm sure, wasn't an estrus because there was nothing trailing her. We looked to make sure that there was no bucks behind her. I'm sure you're wondering why I'm shooting does when we don't see tons of deer and there's not much sign back here. I do have a certain number of does I need to kill on the farm just to keep up with the herd, the natural herd growth. And I don't know, I like shooting them, I'll be honest with you. It's really hard for me to pass up a doe, and they eat good. We'll definitely put that one to good use. So what do we got for a tally? We've seen 2 does, a fawn, and 2 bucks.
Not bad.
Not bad at all. Time for us to wrap up here in the tree. We've got some stuff we got to do down at the building. I've got a guy coming in with delivering some stuff that I ordered, so I got to be there for that. I still say this is my best spot, and when all of these 3-year-olds are 5, this is going to be a fun place to sit. Assuming that they survive and stay on the farm, this could be a pretty cool spot to be spending a November morning. Talk real quick about yesterday's hunt, recap that. I think the thing I wanted to talk about there was just when I use blinds and why. And I like blinds around food sources because you can get really close to where the deer are. Well, put it this way, they can come from any direction, but they're usually going to end up in about the same spot once they get out in there to feed. So rather than trying to figure out, which trail to cover and which ones are going to be downwind, and that's really almost a losing battle. I've tried that for years and just didn't work. So I just put the blind in the area where they tend to end up. And then they get used to it being there, and since it's on a trailer, I can move it a little bit if I need to. So that makes hunting those food sources a lot easier. Plus, I like it when I'm hunting with my daughter, Jordan. That's the second reason, because the shot angles are better for her being low like that, more controlled. Plus we can talk and have fun and not worry so much about if we're spooking deer, with a little bit of movement. So blinds are good for that, for sharing the hunt with other people. And then the third reason I really like them is when you've got a bit of a fickle wind, you can keep the windows closed. And those redneck blinds are really good about holding the scent inside. So you just open the window when you need to, when the shot opportunity finally comes. And we did have bad wind last night. And granted, we didn't have a ton of deer downwind of us, but we did have that little chase took place straight downwind. They never picked up on it. We had our windows you know, all closed, one was cracked. So that recaps yesterday. Today's recap, I guess, is pretty simple. You've seen it. It's just, you got a hot doe. This time of year, you're going to have a lot of action, and if you don't, it's going to be pretty dead. So that's always the way it is. When you get into the middle of November, it's just a matter of putting your time in and getting lucky and catching the right doe. But I'll be back after that Jordan buck with a vengeance when the peak of the rut starts to play out and the bucks start moving again. I appreciate you joining me. I'll see you right back here again soon for the next episode of Hoyt's Bowhunting Whitetails. And remember to always dream big.